We've got a few updates today. I've just seen there. That's not what I'm going to show now, though. The Houthis have entered the chat. Answer Allah. Their shouty spokesman's just being on. They're going to shut the Bab el-Mandeb straight. It's getting interesting, but there's a couple of clips I want to get into. We've got Douglas McGregor first, and then we've got John Meirsheimer. We'll just get into them. I'll keep my thoughts at the end.
Considering hitting energy targets or other locations inside of Iran?
I'll save the energy targets for last, but ultimately we'll hit energy targets, yeah. But we're going to hit them very hard tonight. We're going to hit them very hard tomorrow night. We're going to hit them very hard the night after. And then next week it gets really bad for them because next week comes the power plants. Next week comes the bridges. We're going to knock out all their power plants. We're going to knock out all their bridges unless they get to the table and negotiate.
Bridges, power plants, so the civilians are going to suffer. And these are the same people who are protecting freedom, fighting for democracy. So all the civilians have to suffer, yeah?
First of all, what would happen in Iran if he hits those targets? What will Iran do in retaliation?
Well, Dan, we need to face the reality that this is effectively what General Keane and others like him have argued for. That is, finish the job. Finish the job amounts ultimately into a relapse into barbarism, a descent into the Middle Ages. It means bringing your enemy to his or her knees. That's really what they're saying. In order to do that, in their minds, you're going to have to destroy everything. Most important, not just the petroleum infrastructure, you're going to have to destroy the desalination plants. That's how you bring the country, in their minds, to its knees. Why is this not likely to work? Well, first of all, I think the Iranians are quite prepared to sustain the damage that he's threatening. They have found ways around it in the past. There are other ways to export petroleum, and they'll do it, and those products. Secondly, while this goes on and President Trump is sort of soothing his ego and postponing the inevitable admission of defeat, which has to happen for this to end, frankly. He's got to say, look, this hasn't worked. We've got to disengage. He doesn't want to do that. His ego won't permit him to do such a thing. That means the rest of the world looks at this and says, we're screwed. We're headed into a global depression. And that's where we're going. When you look at fertilizer and the 40-50% increase in the cost of it, it's not just the cost, it's the availability. The nitrogen that is vital and essential, the helium that you absolutely need for the production of microcircuitry. All of these things fall into the same categories. This is a catastrophe, and it's being brought on not by Iran, contrary to what we think. It's being brought on by us in our unconditional allegiance to Israel.
And just one quick note. Obviously up here in Northumberland, I'm from Newcastle, but I live right on the border with Northumberland. A lot of my friends are farmers. They got rid of crop rotation years ago because we got all this cheap fertilizer from the Gulf. So they just keep growing on the same land, the same crops, year after year, year after year, for profit. The ground's, it's got any fertilizer in it, so they need it, this is the thing.
Because it is ultimately Israel that demands the destruction of Iran. We have no particular reason why we should destroy the Iranian state or murder most of its population. That's not what we're about, but that's what it's become. That's what you're describing. And that's why it's a relapse into barbarism. Now, what will the Iranians do? Well, what would you do? I would fight back with everything at my disposal. And I would punish, absolutely annihilate everything and anyone who stands with us. So if you're living in Kuwait or Bahrain or Qatar or the United Arab Emirates, or for that matter, even Saudi Arabia, I would get ready, because if you think you're going to escape the consequences of Trump's war and Israel's demand for Iran's destruction, you will not. And the elites that are ruling in those countries will be swept out of power. They've already reached out to Jordan, and I am sure that they have thousands of weapons and missiles remaining that they will ultimately use against Israel. And there's not a great deal we can do. We cannot shut that down. And we've talked about this before. Our technology, as Ted Postal and others have pointed out, has not reached the point where we can reliably protect any of these places. The smart move, the intelligent move, is to recognize the limits of our power, to recognize the futility and say, that's enough, no more. We wish you well, Israel, but we cannot go on with this campaign. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. Do you?
I don't. But what I do see coming is, and Iran has been signaling some of the things they're going to do, in addition to the things you just mentioned about hitting those kinds of targets, same kind of targets that Trump said he would hit on Iran, they would impose upon our allies. Pardon me, but there's some additional stuff here. This so-called triangle of economic death here, that if Iran does more than just shut down the Strait of Hormuz, because now they've also shut down Fajr, so that's actually added additional strain onto the oil supply right now. But they also said, along with Ansar al-Islam, the Houthis, that they could shut down the Bab el-Mandab at the southern end of the Red Sea and could potentially gum up the works even in the Suez Canal with some of the Houthi missiles.
Sorry, that's why. I'll try and link it on the end of this. Ansarallah. I'm hopeless with these names, Their spokesman, the very shouty man, he's been on like they're doing it. They, like you say, Yemen and the Houthis have been fighting with the Saudis and going on what Doug was saying there as well. These are all meant to be Muslims, man. One ummah. But the regime's in control. Read the Quran, man. Look what they're doing. They claim to be religious. They think they're righteous. Wrong.
Shut down those three things right there as a result, as a response to what President Trump would do in there. And I mean, how could anything except for, I mean, a near-term recession start and possibly even a depression in the not-too-distant future? I mean, those things, that's got to get the attention of other people around the world that don't want anything to do with this war, doesn't it?
Well, there isn't anybody else out there that wants anything to do with this war. That's what we need to understand. The Chinese, the Russians, the Indians, all of these people are disinterested in this war. They want it to end. We're the only ones that are talking about war. When you go to Asia, you go to these conferences, you know, Hegseth was just over there and talked about China. Everybody in the audience is looking at him like this man's lost his mind. They're not interested in going to war with China. Neither are the Koreans or the Japanese or anybody else. And now that we've demonstrated that we can't protect anybody because we just don't have the technology to do it, the question is going to be, why are we still in Korea? Why are we still in Japan? We can't protect anybody. If we can't protect somebody, then we're a magnet for trouble. We're a catalyst for conflict. And the sad part is that President Trump instinctively understood this during his first term. And he was thinking in the right terms. But, you know, if you don't have a foundation of knowledge and understanding, you can be talked out of things that make sense in favor of things that don't. There's nothing firm that you can base your decision making on. And I think that's his biggest problem. So right now, he is bullying his way forward, hoping that something will happen, something will break. The idea that Suez could be shut down is not a new one. And frankly speaking, even though it's still useful to the states that, like Saudi Arabia and others, it's not what it was because of the Houthi operation. I was reading the other day, because I've had to understand the oil industry, and people that have looked at this industry since these things began have said the same thing. None of it has ever recovered. It's not just the Strait of Hormuz. It's access to the Red Sea. It's access and movement through the Suez. All of these places are suffering. What you're doing is you're taking a patient that's already on life support, frankly, in a purely fiscal, economic sense, and you're killing them. You're disconnecting them, and you're putting at least 1 billion people or more on this planet at great risk. You're making famine inevitable. You're stopping the delivery of food. Everything that you can think of that is bad is inevitably coming about because of this stupidity of making war against Iran on behalf of Israel. That's it. And it needs to stop. The sooner it stops, the better off we will all be. Our world is not going to end, and armies of Islamist radicals are not going to march into the United States. Well, so we've got some already that are here. They didn't have to invade. We let them in. But the point is that this sort of ridiculous notion that the world will end if we stop this is wrong.
And that's the thing, he could have walked away, but I guess all the money he's being paid by the likes of Miriam Adelson is kind of clouding his judgment. But I wanted to show you a little bit of John Meirsheimer. We've got a clip of him next. And what he's saying basically echoes what Doug was saying, like this is scary, this is dangerous. Sorry for this place
Yeah,
with sorry. I apologise. I'm new to this. How I let us off. But this is important, and it needs sharing because people don't understand what's going on. This is gonna be bad. This is gonna be very, very, very bad.
with the drones being hit by Houthis, by Ansarullah in the Red Sea, I thought that they're not going to open up a new front with Iran. I thought that that would be a huge lesson for the Trump administration. But it seems that they went with the war against Iran. And as you mentioned, the time is going on and the war is happening. And what amazes me a lot is that the Trump administration is repeating the same mistakes, not only with the war, with the Operation Freedom in the Persian Gulf. They started that operation for 24 hours, less than 24 hours. They have decided, because of the difficulties they had from Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, they said, you're not going to use our airspace. So you're not going to continue that. Then Donald Trump said, oh, we're gonna end the operation. And right now with the MOU, they're repeating the same. And what is that? Is that they're feeling that every time the situation gonna change, or the new factors are coming in, or it's somehow repeating it themselves somehow, because that looks so stupid. Looking at the attitude, it's so unbelievably, nobody can understand what's going on with the administration. Well, how do you understand that? This repeating the same mistakes over and over and believing that something new may come out of this?
I have no answer to that question. I can't figure out what they're thinking myself, as I tried to make clear. We have no war-winning strategy. Trump obviously found it difficult to swallow the 17 June Memorandum of Understanding, and he decided that he could try to push the Iranians around by, creating this U.S.-dominated channel in the Strait of Hormuz. Why he thought he could do that, why he thought he could get away with it, I don't know. Why he thinks that he can win a tit-for-tat campaign against Iran when he couldn't win a strategic bombing campaign against Iran in the early weeks of this war escapes me. I just don't get it at all. I think it has to do mainly with the fact that there are a lot of people around Trump who are dissatisfied with the Memorandum of Understanding of June 17, and they want him to go back on the offensive and see if he can get a better deal. But do any of those people have a military strategy in mind that will allow Trump to succeed? I think the answer is clearly no. Nobody's been able to put out or tell a story about how we can use military force. Let me make a point or two about the issue you raised regarding the attack on the Houthis that happened in early 2025. Of course, President Trump comes into the White House in January of 2025. And then in March, he says, as you made clear, that we're going to get tough with the Houthis and we're going to defeat the Houthis. The Biden administration was filled with pussycats and they were unwilling to really get hard-nosed or play hardball with the Houthis. And we're going to do that. Well, by May of 2025, we quit. And by the way, Nima, one of the reasons we quit is we were using up precious ammunition. There was the first big piece of evidence that we had limited amounts of precious ammunition, and we were using it up against the Houthis, number one. And number two, we were not defeating the Houthis. So that war ended, and it was a failure. It's very important to understand that we failed. Then the second big event, which you didn't mention, was the 12-day war
In June of 2025, this is June 13th to June 25th, the Israelis start the war and they do most of the fighting. There's that one day, it's June 22nd, where we bomb a series of nuclear installations inside of Iran. And at the end of that one day, Trump declares victory. He said that he has obliterated Iran's nuclear capability. And then, of course, the war ends on June 25th. And the United States and Israel portray this as a victory. And I think that the sense that we were successful in the 12-day war helped lead Trump to conclude before the February 28th attacks on Iran that we could use military force again against Iran and we would prevail. We would produce a decisive victory. The problem is that our goals were limited in the 12-day war. We went after nuclear installations. But the February 28th war, which of course is still going on today, had very ambitious goals. You remember, we said we had 4 particular goals. Number 1 was regime change. Number 2 was to end Iran's nuclear enrichment capability. Number 3 was to end their long-range missile program. And number 4 was to end Iranian support for the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas. These are remarkably ambitious goals. And most importantly, you're talking about regime change. You weren't talking about regime change back in the June 2025 war. And once you go to regime change, you have to ask yourself, how are you going to get regime change? And almost everybody understands the only way you get regime change is with boots on the ground. This is what happened in Iraq. March 19th, 2023, we went to war against Iraq. We invaded Iraq. That's how we got rid of Saddam Hussein, with ground forces. Well, President Trump was convinced by the Israelis, by Benjamin Netanyahu and David Barnea, who's the head of Mossad, that they could use air power alone to cause regime change in Iran. This is a remarkably foolish idea. The evidence that this is not possible is overwhelming. And this is why many of Trump's principal supporters thought that accepting the Israeli idea that we should go to war on February 28th, and with a shock and awe air campaign that included decapitation of the regime leadership, we would win a quick and decisive victory, was delusional. It was delusional. And many of Trump's advisors thought that. But Trump himself was convinced by the Israelis that we had a war-winning strategy. And off we went to war on February 28th, and it failed. And it's hardly surprising that it failed. Again, the evidence is overwhelming that air power alone cannot cause regime change. Nevertheless, Trump decided he would try to do it.
And Trump did decide he would try and do it. And just quickly, very interesting points he brings up, and it was 2003, not 2023. John Meirsheimer just got his dates a bit mixed up because he is a fountain of knowledge, he is, but it was 2003 when America invaded Iraq. But I'll just stitch that on at the end because it just came out while I was doing a little bit, watching a few clips to find out what was happening. But the Houthis have entered the chat. I'll put that on the end here now.
أولا تعلن القوات المسلحة اليمنية حظر الملاحة البحرية على العدو السعودي المجرم وفق معادلة الحصار بالحصار، وسيدخل حيز التنفيذ من لحظة إعلان هذا البيان. ثانيا نؤكد على حق شعبنا العظيم في مواجهة الحصار بالحصار والتصعيد الشامل بالتصعيد الشامل وتثبيت هذه المعادلة.
The Houthis have entered the chat. Like you see, this isn't good, like. Sorry. So I'll be quiet. Sorry. This isn't good, like. Not good at all. Worrying times, like, because it's going to get worse, like, but we'll have to keep an eye on what's happening, and that was just a quick update from me.